Selfish father. My daughter yelled as my son-in-law threw a glass. At 1 a.m., the police arrived. At exactly 1:07 a.m., I heard the sound of shattering glass. Not the kind that slips from someone's hand by accident. Not the nervous clink of a dish against a sink. This was sharp, violent, final. And then my daughter's voice cut through the dark hallway. Selfish father. Those two words hit harder than the glass ever could. I never imagined that the house I built with 30 years of savings would become the place where my own child would look at me like I was a stranger. My name is Khalid. I'm 62 years old. A retired school principal. A widower. And, until recently, I believed I had done everything right as a father. When my wife passed away 7 years ago, my daughter, Aisha, became my entire world. She was 21 then, soft-spoken, stubborn in the quiet way her mother used to be. We grieved together. We learned how to live in the silence together. I cooked badly. She pretended to like it. We survived. So when she introduced me to Imran 3 years ago, I did what any careful father would do. I watched. Imran was polite, calm, respectful. He looked me in the eye when he spoke. Called me, Abu, after the wedding without hesitation. Brought sweets on random evenings. Fixed the leaking tap without being asked. He was everything a father hopes for in a son-in-law. Or so I thought. After their marriage, they moved into the upper portion of my house. It wasn't my first choice. I had suggested they start fresh somewhere else. But Aisha insisted. Abu, why should we pay rent somewhere else when you're alone here? We can take care of you. Take care of me. That phrase felt warm, safe. So I agreed. At first, it felt like life had returned to the house. Laughter at dinner. Footsteps on the stairs. The smell of cardamom tea in the evenings. Imran would sit with me after Maghrib prayer, asking about my school stories. He'd listen like they mattered. And Aisha, she seemed happy. But happiness can sometimes look like obedience. The first small crack appeared 6 months in. Imran started suggesting changes. Abu, you don't really need the car anymore, right? It just sits there. He said it gently, smiling. I told him I still liked driving to the park in the mornings. He nodded, but something in his eyes lingered. Calculation, maybe. I brushed it aside. Then it was the finances. Why don't we manage the household expenses together? It'll be easier. It sounded practical, logical. I handed over access to the electricity and gas payments. Eventually, he offered to organize my bank statements because, according to him, banks confuse older people. I laughed at that. I had been managing accounts long before he finished college. But I let him help. Because trust, once given, doesn't come with a receipt. Aisha grew quieter over time. Not distant, just careful. When I asked if everything was okay, she'd smile too quickly. Of course, Abu, why wouldn't it be? But I began noticing how she looked at Imran before answering certain questions. Like she was checking if her words were acceptable. It unsettled me. One evening, I overheard them arguing upstairs. It wasn't loud enough to make out details, but I caught my name. My name. When I asked her about it the next day, she laughed. Abu, you worry too much. It was nothing. That word started to follow me around the house. Then came the documents. Imran approached me one afternoon with printed papers neatly stacked. Abu, it's just a property restructuring. For tax benefits. If the house is partially transferred now, it'll avoid complications later. He spoke confidently, like someone who had rehearsed. I didn't sign, not because I suspected him, but because I wasn't ready. This house wasn't just bricks. It held my wife's last breath. My daughter's childhood drawings still hidden in drawers. The scratch on the kitchen wall from when Aisha learned to ride a bicycle indoors against my advice. I'll think about it, I said. For the first time, Imran's smile didn't reach his eyes. After that, the air shifted. Small things changed. The tea stopped coming to my room in the mornings. The laughter upstairs became rarer. And the electricity bill, one I had always paid on time, suddenly, accidentally, went unpaid twice. Imran blamed system errors. I said nothing, but the silence between us grew heavier. The night everything tilted began quietly. It was past midnight when I heard raised voices upstairs. I told myself not to interfere. Married couples argue. That's normal. Then I heard my daughter crying. Not the soft sniffles of frustration. This was raw, I climbed halfway up the stairs, heart pounding in a way it hadn't in years. Imran's voice was firm, controlled. You need to choose, Aisha. Choose. Between what? And then, a crash. Glass shattered against something hard. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot in the dark. I froze. A second later, footsteps thundered down the stairs. Aisha appeared in the hallway, tears streaking her face, breathing like she had run a marathon. She looked at me, not with relief, with anger. Selfish father, she shouted. The words struck deeper than the sound of breaking glass. Before I could even process them, Imran came down behind her, his expression unreadable. Abu, he said calmly, almost gently, this is exactly why we can't move forward. Move forward. I opened my mouth to speak, but a loud knock slammed against the front door. 3 sharp, official knocks. The kind that don't belong at 1 a.m. Imran and I looked at each other. Another knock. Open the door. Police. My heart dropped. Aisha stepped back from me, wiping her tears, refusing to meet my eyes. Imran adjusted his sleeves, and in that moment, standing in my own house, with my daughter trembling and the police at my door, I realized something I had been too blind to see. This wasn't about arguments. This wasn't about paperwork. This was about something else entirely. The knocking grew louder, and as I reached for the door handle, I understood. Whatever story was about to be told, I wasn't the one who had written it. To be continues. Selfish father. My daughter yelled as my son-in-law threw a glass. At 1 a.m., the police arrived. The knocking didn't stop. Each pound against the door felt like a countdown. I opened it with trembling hands. 2 officers stood under the dim porch light. Their faces were calm, professional, but alert. One of them looked past me into the hallway. Sir, we received a domestic disturbance call from this address. Domestic disturbance. The words felt foreign in my home. I didn't call, I managed. Behind me, I heard Aisha inhale sharply. The second officer stepped slightly forward. We need to make sure everyone is safe. Safe. Wasn't that what I had spent my entire life trying to ensure? I stepped aside. They entered carefully, eyes scanning the room. Aisha stood near the staircase, arms wrapped around herself. Imran remained a few steps behind her, controlled, composed. Too composed. The officer turned to my daughter first. Ma'am, are you okay? Aisha hesitated. In that pause, 1,000 memories flashed before me. Her first day of school. The way she used to hide behind my leg when strangers spoke to her. The way she trusted me without question. Now she looked at me like I was the stranger. Yes, she said quietly. I'm fine. The officer's gaze shifted to Imran. Sir, there was just a misunderstanding, Imran replied smoothly. A family disagreement. My father-in-law got upset. My chest tightened. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't thrown anything. But suddenly, the room felt like it was rearranging itself around a version of me I didn't recognize. The officer glanced at the shattered glass near the staircase. Who threw that? Silence. Imran didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at Aisha. And she looked at the floor. I did, she whispered. My head snapped toward her. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I was emotional, she added. It was my fault. My fault. My daughter was taking responsibility for something I knew she hadn't done. The officers exchanged a look. They asked a few more questions, measured, routine. No accusations, just assessment. Sir, one of them said to me gently, have there been ongoing conflicts in the home? I opened my mouth. This was the moment. I could say everything. About the documents. About the pressure. About the subtle shifts. About the way Aisha had grown smaller in her own home. But when I looked at her face, pale, fragile, silently pleading, I realized something. She wasn't ready, and if I spoke too soon, I might push her further away. We've had disagreements, I said carefully. But nothing that requires police. The officer studied me for a long second. Then he nodded. After confirming that no one was physically hurt and no property beyond the glass was damaged, they gave a formal warning about noise and conflict. They left with a final, measured look that lingered on Imran longer than the rest of us. The door closed, and the silence that followed was heavier than before. Aisha walked upstairs without another word. Imran stayed behind. For the first time since I had known him, the politeness dropped from his face. You shouldn't have opened the door like that, he said quietly. My house. My door. My hand tightened against the wall for balance. I didn't call them. I know, he replied. But situations can escalate when people feel cornered. Cornered. Was that how he saw me? Or how he had made her feel. I'm not your enemy, Imran, I said slowly. He gave a thin smile. That depends on perspective. Then he walked upstairs, leaving me alone in the hallway with broken glass at my feet. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at the dining table where Aisha used to do her homework. The same table where I had once promised her she would never have to fight life alone. And yet she had just stood there and called me selfish. Selfish. The word replayed in my mind over and over. Had I had refused to sign the property transfer papers. I had insisted on keeping control of my finances. I had hesitated when Imran talked about planning for the future. Was protecting what I built selfish? Or was it the only thing keeping me from losing everything? The next morning, Aisha came downstairs early. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She avoided looking at me while making tea. Aisha, I said softly. She paused, but didn't turn. Why did you say that last night? Her shoulders stiffened. You don't understand, Abu. Then help me understand. Silence. Then she faced me, and in her eyes, I saw fear. Not anger. Fear. He feels like you don't trust him, she said. Like you don't want us to move forward. Move forward how? She hesitated again. With security, stability, ownership. Ownership. There it was. He says if the house isn't in both our names, we'll always feel temporary here. Like guests. Guests. In the home where she learned to walk. I swallowed. And what do you feel? I asked gently. Her voice cracked. I feel stuck in the middle. That hurt more than anything else. Because I had never wanted her to choose. I only wanted her safe. Later that afternoon, I did something I should have done months ago. I reviewed my bank account personally. Several transfers had been made, small at first, then larger, labeled as joint household adjustments. My stomach turned cold. They weren't catastrophic amounts, but they were consistent, deliberate, careful enough not to alarm me, careful enough that I hadn't noticed. Until now. That evening, I waited for Imran to come home. When he did, I placed the printed statements on the table between us. His eyes flickered, just briefly. Just organizing things, Abu, he said smoothly. For efficiency. Without asking me. We're family. Family. I looked at him steadily. Family doesn't move money quietly. The air changed again. His jaw tightened. You're making this bigger than it is. Am I? Upstairs, I heard Aisha's footsteps pause. Listening. Caught between us. And suddenly, I understood the true fracture. This wasn't about property. It wasn't about money. It was about control. Slow, patient, layered control. Imran leaned back in his chair. If you don't trust me, he said evenly, maybe it's better we find our own place. The words were calm, but they carried weight, a threat wrapped as a solution. From the staircase, Aisha's voice trembled. Please, don't do this. And in that moment, I realized something chilling. The police hadn't been the beginning of the crisis. They had been a rehearsal. A test. To see how far things could be pushed. To see who would speak. And who would stay silent. I looked at my daughter. She wasn't angry at me. She was trapped. And I had a choice to make. Hold on to my pride, or finally confront what I had been avoiding. Imran stood up slowly. So, he said, adjusting his cuffs, what's it going to be? The house felt smaller. The walls closer. My daughter's future balanced on a line I hadn't drawn, but was now forced to walk. I opened my mouth to answer. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure whether protecting my daughter meant letting her go, or fighting for her to stay.